Hello and welcome back to my channel, and thanks for joining me on my channel update number 8. I don't really have too many things to discuss on this one, but there was a few things that came to mind. The first one is I want to give some updates on the games being played on the channel and further refinement of my future plans. So I've had a bit of a thought about just exactly how I want to accommodate all the games on my channel and just some techniques how to do that. And discuss my thinking on the formats which can be utilized to play or present the games. So obviously there's the solo role-playing campaigns that I'm involved in just now, but I was thinking maybe some of the other formats that I could utilize, maybe more short-term like mini adventure type setups or mini campaigns. That type of thing, and that might be allow some of the other probably less represented games on give them a little chance to appear on the channel. Also appraisal of my campaigns and what I like about them and the RPGs being used, and I think I've got to the stage now where I can give quite a comprehensive assessment of just how I'm feeling about each of the individual campaigns, and just about some of my insights into how how I've developed a kind of feelings about them as I've played them, as I've designed mechanics around them, as I've almost like kind of re-engaged with them after so long a period of time, and whether my thoughts have changed on them. So, but first of all, you might have noticed in the background, you're thinking, what are those strange books that you've got there, Brian? You've got Chivalry and Sorcery on it. Surely you're not going to think about bringing Chivalry and Sorcery as your next game. No, I'm not. So I want to first of all dispel illusion. I was trying to source this book here, which is called Swords and Sorcerers, which was an expansion of the Chivalry and Sorcery first edition rulebook. I'd already shown you that I had got the source book and this. I got a very reasonable price on eBay. I was delighted with it, and I said, well, the only thing that I'm missing is a copy of Swords and Sorcerers, and the only ones I could ascertain that I could get access to were ones that were in the United States. I'd have to pay about $20-30 shipping. They weren't in fantastic condition, some of them, and they were also about $30-40, maybe $50. So after conversion, I'd still be spending well over £60. I saw on just by chance on the British eBay, I saw a box which was second edition box of Chivalry and Sorcery, which I originally owned. Maybe I got it when it came out in 1983. I owned it up until probably the noughties when I sold it, and I sold it for quite a good price. I got must have about £45 or something. I'd never actually played it. I had read it quite extensively, and I had drawn on it, and I thought it was a core, quite a good rule system, but I'd never played it. But just cut a long story short, this was part of the package. Just to show you, this was the box that appeared on the eBay, and I thought, right, okay, it's just going to be the 3 books that are inside. Let's take the lid off. There's 3 books. There's the Chivalry and Sorcery first book. There's the second book, which deals with society. So this is all about character generation. This is the society, and this talks about magic and monsters. So I thought, yeah, great, I'm going to get all these. And lo and behold, I got access to all these other stuff. I had, there's the CNS source book, the chap was selling, and source book 2, which was, yeah, that's quite a rare thing to see. And also this particular edition, second edition, had a range of, I think the first one was called the Dragon Lords. This is the second scenario, called the Songsmith, and it's set in a kind of bespoke world they've got. I think it's called the North Kingdom, and this is a scenario book for it. And then it had character sheets. It's got, as you can see, quite a complicated character creation process. Very rewarding to do. I'll have to do that one of these days on camera. But it had this too, which was what I was after. But I got all these other books, and it was only around about £40. You would not believe it. So you could have knocked me over with a feather. I really was quite flabbergasted. And I thought, well, I just can't resist it. And I thought, well, I'll get all these books back. Because again, I've never owned Source Book 2. So I was quite delighted to get that. And I did have a copy of the original Source Book for the second edition. And I sold that. I think I got about £20 on that too. So, I basically got more money back. And they're in great condition. I've given them a good kind of polishing up and maybe taking some of the residue off. And the thing was, I suppose with these older, it's 1983, if you've got white, it does tend to discolor quite a bit. But, in general, they are in pristine condition. And they really are, there was quite a revision between this version here and this one. It probably kept a lot of the core of this, but what had happened with this version was that it integrated a skill system and basically modernized it. It was like a response to the role-playing hobby. They realized that this was very much a first generation, almost like if AD&D had stayed at D&D, Chivalry and Sorcery it was effectively like that kind of era. Whereas Chivalry, this second edition, was more a response to things like RuneQuest and the evolution of the hobby. By the time we got it, we'd kind of moved on from role-playing games. We were sort of more interested in other things by then, which is the classic young man syndrome. I kept this for a while, and I did use it as a kind of source of information. So I was delighted with that. So I've now I've got the box too, which is great, so I can store them all away. So I was the primary prize was to get this, and this is what this does. Is this deals with Vikings, steppe nomads, Gaels, and Picts, and it's got some fantastic rules about Nordic society, the Nordic warriors, all the things about runes. Here we go, Nordic barbarian. Again, the actual binding's terrible on these, and we put them in ring binders in the end. I'm going to try and think of a way to try and protect them, so I don't have to put hole punches in them, which I think is an absolute disaster if you do that. I like to keep them as they are, but it is quite difficult to leaf through this. But the other thing was this fantastic system at the back, which is called the Strategic Warfare System. And this is what I was alluding to a few times, that we played this a lot, which was basically a kind of abstract simulation of warfare that you could do. And we had endless battles with orcs and between our baronial characters doing all sorts of things. That's a nice picture of that, isn't it? Shows you what medieval warfare was like. Line them up and fire your arrows and then charge. So that I just wanted to show you that I have added another role-playing game, a second edition, Chivalry and Sorcery, to my list. Things might become a bit more transparent on that later on. So let's get back to the matters in hand. So the other thing I wanted to do, just following up from these initial thoughts that I said I wanted to discuss, I have what I call a channel matrix, which is a summary of the games, portfolios, and formats used to play and experience them. So let's have a look at that. It's probably saying, what are you on about, Brian? What are you talking? I have two sheets here. The Excel spreadsheet is being well utilized. Let's just see if that's completely in camera, and I think it is. Yes. So what I've done is I've listed all my games, my first generation late 1970s, early 1980s RPGs, and I have got basically a kind of almost like a breakdown of what I want to do with them, what are my plans, and this is a comprehensive, almost like an overview of that I can just look at an aid memoir and say, yeah, this is what I want to do with each of these individual games. So let's take Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition first. And this is my Northern Marches campaign, and I am up to the whacking amount of 92 videos. And in fact, I've got to the point where I am probably going to have to, I think when I get to 100, I've got it here, a new playlist for the next 100 videos. I think when I get to 100, I'm going to have to create a new playlist and call my first 100 stage one, stage one, and then maybe have Adventures in Dragons First Edition Stage 2 as my next 100. I don't this my enthusiasm for this is just not waned. In fact, it's probably increased. I'm enjoying it more and more. I suppose the incidence is maybe not as rapid fire because I've got other games on the go, but you know, to me that's my top game. And also I have these other formats that I have been experimenting with. I've had read-throughs of the Dungeon Master's Guide. I plan to have tutorials on some of the rules as well. I think that might be quite useful. You know, following up on when I did a quick thing on surprise, and that was more a kind of an apology because I'd been doing surprise wrong. But I thought, well, why not? You know, if I can master these rules and illustrate them, why not give some demos on that? And then some of the other options I have been considering, because this is based on my own proprietary setting that I've just randomly generated. I thought, well, you know, I do have the option that I have some of the modules of AD&D. I could maybe do playthroughs of low-level AD&D official modules. You know, that's an option with my AD&D rules. And also there's a Greyhawk mini campaign I was maybe thinking about in a specific nation of Greyhawk. But, you know, I would say that these things are way down the line. We're talking well into next year, if not the year after. You know, I want to maintain my Northern Marches. I think there's a lot of life in that. And when I come to the later stage of this video, I'll be waxing lyrical about my admiration and enjoyment that I'm getting from that. Also the Traveller, my Traveller Classic Edition. This is the Shadow Nebula. I'm up to 23 videos. You would not believe. We started adventuring in. I am gone full traveller now. I am racing through the starport, doing all sorts of things to do with chasing assassins and having patron encounters and all that good stuff. So I've got right into the Traveller now. You know, it's almost getting to the point where it's I wouldn't say mature, but it's getting to a kind of a sort of a young adult stage. It's just about ready to get into you know sprint down the track. And again, I've been experimenting with read-throughs. I'm going to try and make that a bit more extensive on the Traveller book, the classic book. Tutorials again, yes, yeah, probably less emphasis. I'd rather do the AD&D and RuneQuest first, but you know, tutorials might be a nice idea. And then you know, the Third Imperium setting. I could do playthroughs of the classic Traveller modules set in the Third Imperium. So I have things like Research Station Gamma, and I have some of the other ones like Twilight's Peak and whatever. You know, why not play them through? And also the Third Imperium mini campaign in the Spinwood Marches, which I always thought was a very attractive setting to play in. And why not kick it off with the Kinnaneer Adventure 1, you know, the first one we ever did, which we found very tantalising and exciting. And we must have played about 10 adventures just based on that one little book. It really spawned a lot of creativity. So that's my Traveller situation. On RuneQuest 2nd edition, my Great Vale campaign. Again, I'm up to 12 videos. That's quite getting on for quite a few now. Again, the read-throughs on the RuneQuest Classic Edition book is something that I'm enjoying, and definitely tutorials I think would be a good thing for them. You know, after having a bit of an experience of doing the combat, as almost like as a kind of training thing, because I was setting it up as basically the characters were being put through their paces, and it was like a bit of a training scenario, so that we could get used to the combat rules, and I could just show you what it was like on on the screen, and how I could simulate it when it gets to something larger, so that when we've got, say, 4 or 5 characters jumping about with, say, 6 or 7 opponents, how you're probably saying, Brian, how on earth are you going to try and manage that? Well, I'm going to try to do something on that. Use some summaries and whatever, and just get your brain cells really attuned to the situation. And on the module side, well, I do have access to PDFs of the RuneQuest modules, and I thought, well, why not some of the early ones, like Ballasta Barracks or Apple Lane, or what was it, Snakepike Hollow. Give them a shot with some characters, and then also just using the Glorantha setting and actually immersing myself in Glorantha with a mini campaign. And I thought, well, what's not better than to use than Balazar and Griffin Mountain? That was really that was the peak of our RuneQuest play, when we went into Balazar, and we had some amazing adventures there. Met some amazing NPCs, and there just was an awful lot of, it had such a feel about it. This sort of semi-Stone Age society coming up against the kind of, almost like the culture shock of civilization, the empire of the Lunar Empire, and also, I suppose, the other Dragon Pass nationalities, which were much more advanced than this thing. But it was always interesting as a kind of melting pot of Glorantha in a quite a self-contained and I think for a referee, quite a manageable campaign setting. So that I think I've got that on the stocks at some stage. My BX Dungeons and Dragons, the Barony of Westmark, 8 videos now. Woohoo! Playthroughs of specific BX modules. Well, I haven't really touted that yet, but maybe that's an option. And then, of course, for the options for the expansion, I've got the Barony versions 5 and 6, my multiverse concept. So my Barony setting, it has different tiers. So if we unlock the higher tiers of tier 5 and 6, we're into the multiverse of the Barony. So I think I could just keep that within my own self-contained setting. I don't really think there are any. I think it's Mistra or something, but I'm not familiar with Mistra in the same way that I am, say, familiar with Greyhawk or the Third Imperium or Glorantha. So I'm quite happy just to keep my Barony going, and having my multiverse has given me all that different variety. So remember, I've got 10 versions of the Barony out there in different type of hostile environments. It's going to have changed a lot, so I've got all these different exotic multiverse areas that I can go into and adventure in if I have the inclination. And then the new kid on the block, although it is probably the oldest out of the lot of them, as an RPG, is Holmes Basic Dungeons and Dragons, the Great Wilderness setting. I am up to 3 videos on that, and what I've thought about would be playthroughs of modules B1, 2, 3, which are the classic ones associated with this. But I think the Great Wilderness will be a sufficient enough setting for me, and there's no real proprietary setting for Holmes Basic. Again, it might blend into Mistra or whatever, but as I said, with my BX experience, I don't have any knowledge of that at all. I'm quite happy just to keep it with my own setting, but integrate these modules and have areas of my setting that I can just basically insert these, like the Keep on the Borderlands, just say, well, that's where the Keep in the Borderlands is in my setting, which I think is what many Dungeon Masters did back in the day. So this moves on to some of the ones that are on the stocks and have not been launched yet on the channel, but I do have in my, what I call my overall portfolio to consider. And the next that is coming up on the timeline is Stormbringer First Edition. So the campaign will just be called The Young Kingdoms. I'm thinking maybe Q3 2025. So that's probably in the next couple of months, with a mini campaign initially. And I thought, well, maybe that is the way to introduce some of these ancillary games, because these are non-core, whereas The first 4 of these are core, and a Homes Basic again is probably in this category. But it has, because it's maybe a bit more light touch and it doesn't require as much prep. I can maybe accommodate that as if it was kind of semi-core, if you see what I mean. Whereas these other ones, there's quite an investment in all of these. These are quite intense games. Stormbringer, even though it is a RuneQuest Lite, is still a reasonably sophisticated game. Aftermath is definitely complex. That would it takes a bit of basically got to do your PhD in post Holocaust survival. Middle Earth role playing is a difficult game. It's a complex game. The more I expand into this, the more complex they become. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. If we get back to Stormbringer, Q3 2025, we're talking about. And again, I think when I was discussing this in a previous channel update, I said I'd probably go more for the individual orientation for player characters, and I would have us focusing on an individual in a party. So I would have that as our emphasis. We're seeing it through the eyes of this individual. He or she is in a party of, say, 2 or 3 others. They are their companions. They are like effectively fellow party members, but we have basically a first-person view of the world of the Young Kingdoms. That is our central. And I thought that might be quite a novel way to play this solo game. Let's see how we get on. And then if that model works well, I've got Aftermath next on the stocks. And I've got my Edinburgh post-nuclear analog, whatever that means. I'd probably have to show you that again when we come to it. I'm thinking the end of this year, with a mini campaign initially, and I think this is really absolutely set up for an individual first-person orientation, where you really are inside the head of an individual survivor in this dreadful environment. And we can really almost like experience it through his or her eyes, just exactly how appalling the situation is. And I keep on ramping up Aftermath. This is going to be like, it's basically like pulling teeth. And that is, you obviously design to play these games to get a bit of enjoyment. But I think that it's still going to be tinged with maybe the sadness and the feeling of despair that would come from being in such a terrible place. And I just think that makes it far more edgy, far more entertaining, and far more immersive. I think immersive is probably the best word that I want to try and get for my Aftermath campaign. I want to make it feel like we are really there, but not. Closest thing you get to a video game, yeah, that would be my challenge for that. And you'll say, there's no way you can do that, Brian. Well, maybe I have so much experience, because I'll probably be up to like 150 odd in this one. I would have done about 50 for this. I'll have quite a bit of experience, and hopefully, that's what I'm finding. I'm finding this cross-fertilizes, and it helps with some of the other games for me to play them. I'm just hoping that I don't just, it all blends into one kind of mush. They're all very, very samey. I am trying to keep their individual distinctiveness as much as possible, and I'll come on to that in my next section. But let's carry on. Middle Earth role playing, first edition. Now I have discussed this. I'd probably have it in the Adol region, which is northwest Middle Earth, and probably in the area south of Bree up to Tharbad, and it's just pre-War of the Ring. So it's quite an interesting time in a very desolate part of the world, underpopulated. But I think lots of potential. I had a really interesting solo game there, and also I played with my brother there, and it was we had a lot of fun. And Q1 2026, so it'll be just on the back of the new year. Middle Earth role playing will be coming to the channel, and I thought I would run with this what called portfolio of characters, and that means that if you can recall when I was talking about my chivalry and sorcery plans, where I would have maybe say 5 or 6 characters that I would be focusing on, but they don't necessarily have to be all together. They could have been individuals that we could have in different parts of the game world. I'm maybe thinking of maybe having 2 or 3 as my initial portfolio, and just having them either we're venturing together, or I might have say one of them on their own and doing something and interacting and maybe getting colleagues that way, and then the other 2 being a kind of mini party. So that's my portfolio of characters idea. And then I've got Space Opera First Edition, and my campaign would be this colonial expansion idea that I have. So this fresh, vibrant, new Earth type, probably 50 stellar systems that they've colonized, and it's young and it's ambitious and it's trying to get out there amongst the stars, and we're part of it in the space opera. And this could be quite high octane. Try and make space opera exciting. I know a lot of people were thinking there's no way you could do that with this complicated system, but yeah, I think this nice for a portfolio of characters, because they do base it on, but the character creation system is based on classic sci-fi tropes. So you get your armsman, your scientist, your tech, you know, your astronaut. These are all kind of classic tropes of space opera, and I think that is be quite good for a portfolio of characters. So you might say have a character who is an astronaut, and that will be the focus on the naval side and being on a spaceship and all the operations to do with that. And then another one might be an armsman, and it's all about, you know, marines and ground actions and, you know, combat and that sort of thing. My plans for that, Q2 2026, so next year. Chivalry and Sorcery First Edition, Arden and the World of Archeron. And actually, just I did mean to show, I've got this Different Worlds First Edition, which is, I think, was about 1978 or something. This was a magazine that was brought out by Chaosium, I think. You know, it kind of majored on RuneQuest stuff, you know, some of the figures that you can get. But it had an excellent article here, which really caught our imagination. Different Worlds presents The World of Archeron by Ed Symbolis. Ed Symbolis was the writer of Chivalry and Sorcery, with Wilf Backhouse, co-writer. And our World of Archeron was his game world. And we had this tantalizing map, look at that, of this was the world. And it was very much an analogue of Europe, you know, places like the Arab kingdoms and the steppes and the Viking kingdoms. So, you know, it really was kind of a bit of a giveaway there. And this was basically Europe. And then you'd have Arden, which was our central kingdom, which was the one that was heavily designed as one of their expansions. And they never really got into designing any of the others. The tantalizing one obviously was the Empire of Archeron, which was this evil empire, which I've modelled as in my AD&D campaign in the Northern Marches as Acheron, the empire that fell. It had these 13 warlocks and necromancers. Well, this was the same kind of setup here, except this was still alive and living as a threat for all these border areas, you know, and the fact that it was almost like an embodiment of evil in the world. It really was quite something. So I wanted to just quickly show you that. So this again, this is way down the track. So this, almost like this time next year, I'd be thinking about maybe talking to you again about Chivalry and Sorcery First Edition, and that very much is going to be this portfolio of characters. So say we have a knight, we have a magic user, we have a thief, you know, someone in the underclasses, and it's like their individual stories in this feudal world, which I think would be quite interesting. And then something I had done in one of my other channel updates was Adventures in Fantasy First Edition, and that was the one that Dave Arneson produced, and it never really made it at all into any I suppose any kind of recognition. It had a setting called the Blakewood setting, and I thought I would just I would honour it, because I quite liked it. I had a bit of a soft spot for it. I will follow the sample storyline and play through as probably like a mini campaign. So I might just have 10 videos on it in total, and spread it. And I haven't really got a time frame for that. It's going to be probably well into 2026. And then because I got Chivalry and Sorcery Second Edition, I thought, well, why not use what you've got? And I do actually. I suppose I could say, well, I've had experience of it. It was one of my games. I didn't directly play it, but I played its previous version, and I felt like I almost did because I really kind of knew the rules quite effectively. I thought, well, let's give that a bit of an airing, and that will probably just be like one-off little scenarios that I can do. And yeah, the funny one, the one-off fun sessions with the Starship crew. This is the FGU game Starships and Spacemen. My own little setting, and it'll probably be following the exploration, the ship's log of Captain Dirk of the Starship, Starship Krakow. Yeah, that would be the Starship Dragon, and his 5-year mission to do all sorts of strange things in this universe, and it'll probably be quite a light-hearted thing, and which is basically, I suppose, almost like the spirit of it. If you think of Traveller being quite gritty and space opera being quite gritty, Starships and Spacemen, it wasn't. Okay, so that's all of my portfolio. I hope you're still with me. I'm now going to quickly go on to the formats before I just rattle through some of the other games and just what I think of them just now. The formats I'm talking about, the classic one that I'm doing is the solo campaign with my own setting. And that's my standard format, and that's going to be ongoing and the staple of the channel. So that's my bread and butter. That's the one I'm really interested in. That's the one that captures my imagination. So that continues, and that's going to be very healthy. A mini campaign with own or RPG setting. That's another option. So that's going to be more into the next year, and it's a means of playing later tranche games and introducing them without schedule disruption. So I thought, instead of going for the full-blown Northern Marches, say, thing where I do a kind of bottom-up and design, and it takes me about 20 sessions to even get around to playing, I thought for the other games that I'm bringing on, I'll probably just get into the action much quicker and have settings that are already almost pre-cooked. And we're just ready to go. Basically roll off a few characters, and then we're either dungeoneering or jumping in our spaceship and flying off, that type of thing. And there's also a chance to sample the official settings. So we're talking about having adventures in Glorantha, and I can use all the rich Glorantha background, and provide a vehicle to launch subsequent RPGs. So this is more a kind of launch pad type thing, and for non-core, whereas this is my core standard output. And then play RPG modules, one-off adventure sessions. Again, it's next year, and it's a means of playing later tranche games too. So I've got my modules that I can do, if I just remember, modules for all of these. And there probably will be modules for these that I could get access to as options too. And I haven't really played a module through on the channel, so I think I'm probably going to experiment first with Homes, and the Tower of Xenopus will be my first dalliance with that type of format. So let's see how I get on with that. I'm really looking forward to that. That should be quite exciting. The old Tower of Xenopus. But let's see how we get on with that, and that'll maybe just will shape my view of how I carry on with that in that direction. And then Brian Reed's videos. I've been doing a few of these Brian Reeds, and I suppose my voice is probably quite useful if you want to maybe stick it on. Get the green noise going or the white noise. Get the Brian Reed's video going, and you'll be off into the land of Nod before you 5 minutes, I guarantee it. So I'm enjoying doing them. I'll do them ever so often. I might have a little I suppose maybe a couple coming out at a time, and I think my Traveller one was quite short. I got a bit cut off, and so the RingQuest one, I got the cat came in. So I'm hoping they're going to be between 20 and 30 minutes, so they cover a good chunk of the rules, and you could just use them as a kind of audio aid to your understanding, if you don't fall asleep by the time you get to the end of them. Tutorials, I'm thinking of doing these at the starting in Q4 2025 this year, and these will cover my core RPGs. So the four. Probably, I don't think I really need to do BX, but I do feel a need for, it's definitely AD&D, Traveller and RuneQuest. And I think RuneQuest is probably top of my agenda. I just feel a need, almost like an inclination to do that one. Yeah, and what else have I got? I've got a live. Oh yes, then this was something. I thought, well, this sounds quite novel, and I've seen a few other YouTubers do what are called live streams. And, I don't really know anything about live streams, and I thought, well, I could start these in Q1 2026 and just see how I get on. So that would be effectively, the format would be a Q&A and discussion of games and campaigns. So this would be all games and channel related topics that would be on it, and Brian answers your questions. So you could have a bit of an interaction with me. Maybe I just have the live stream going for an hour, and you can put on, I don't really, I really have to try and find out how it works. But I have seen other people do this thing where they just respond to questions, and almost have a bit of a say a subject that they want to talk about, and then they're getting questions about it, and then it maybe goes off on tangents, and in the end it's almost like a conversation with your viewers. And that just seemed to quite have that really quite. I thought that was really quite. Because I've always said I really enjoy answering the queries and the comments on the channel. I thought this takes it to a different level, and I could really quite enjoy this interaction and having on the spot live. What is your view on this, Brian? That type of thing. I think that would be really quite exciting, and I'd really quite enjoy that. So yeah. That is something that's coming to this channel. So these are all the different formats. The classic campaign setting, the alternative mini campaign, the one-off module, Brian reads videos, the tutorials, and the live stream. And I think I would have to say that that's enough. I can't think of any other formats that I could do. And you're probably saying that's enough, Brian, too. So let's get on to other, and I don't. This shouldn't take me too long to get through, and this is to do with individual campaign appraisal. So I am saying that I'm enjoying the fact that I'm getting so much from all my RPGs and seeing the best in each, and I feel that I am playing to their strengths. I've got no critical eye this time around, and what I mean by that is that when I played my games back in the late 70s and 80s, I was of that age where you were always trying to improve, and you thought the grass was always greener somewhere else. And any game that I had, I was not satisfied with. I always wanted to tinker with it, and I wanted to merge it with something else, or take something from, say, AD&D and put it into RuneQuest, or vice versa. And this time around, I have not had that inclination at all. So I've had no changes or enhancements wanted. I've accepted the games as drafted, and I'm not trying to evolve them into what I would classify as a super RPG hybrid, which was my my grand design back in. I remember at the height of my tinkering in the early 1980s, I was really after some almost like what's it, the Holy Grail of RPGs, the perfect RPG. And it just was not going to happen. So this conceptual barrier, which would have been a major one to get through if I'd experienced that, let's say this time, but this didn't feature at all. So I can turn all that creative focus that I had diverted into these, writing endless modifications to skill systems, to the ways to promote and emphasize the merits of each of the games that I'm doing now. Phew! So I'm going, yes, I don't have to basically use all that creative energy. I can put it into something a bit more useful and a bit more focused on the channel. So my objective now is on creating the solo mechanics and develop methods to game each of these differently. So that's where I've put my emphasis now, is to go for solo mechanics for each of these individual games, and to play them differently and play to their strengths. So To me, that seems a much better way of utilizing my energy. Let's see what I like the most about these RPGs and campaigns. So for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I'm saying the random platform and tables I really like. I like the fact that it had it had a kind of basic solo framework to start with. It's got endless tables that you can roll on. It's got a lot of resources. The complexity and richness of the rules. Now you might say, well, complexity is sometimes a bad thing. I actually quite enjoy it. I think I get a bit of a kick out the complexity of AD&D, almost to the point where it's just overly complex, just for the sake of it. But I quite like that. I think it's quite quaint. The character classes, I've suddenly realized just how much I love the AD&D character classes. The ranger class and the paladin and just everything. I just love it, and the way it's presented. And I never really kind of appreciated just how good it is that is, and what a fundamental concept it is to playing RPGs, having a class that basically defines your player, your character. And I know it's probably going against maybe a more modernist view where you've got to have these rounded, complex individuals. But yeah, it's nothing like just saying, right, you've got a fighter. You just go around bashing people on the head with your sword. That's your job. You don't want to have to worry about their moral background or whatever. So yeah, I've really enjoyed that part of it. Character evolution, each has a personality, affection, and identification. I feel like my little party, they've really grown on me. I really like them. They're all individuals. They've all got personalities, even though they're little plastic pawns. I've got some fantastic NPCs that I've managed to generate randomly. I've got Lord Seaward, I've got Cassandra, Kayla, the magic user. I've got all sorts of people. That lady that says the Hidden Society. There's all sorts of things. Klondike Bill, Derry, the dwarf. Yeah. The setting is predominantly random and combined with some designed interventions, and I've been very happy with the outcome. I think it's generated a lot of interesting twists and turns, and I've really enjoyed that part of it. Could you get even more excited about this, Brian? Well, I'll carry on. The stakes of the setting, there's growing menaces on various levels. So at a high level, we have this corruption and conspiracy that is affecting the Northern Marches. At a medium level, we've got the Hidden Society that we've now just discovered. And at a low level, we've got Klondike Bill and Derry, being menaces with their gang, that hole in the wall gang. The solo framework, I would say, is now stable, and I'm only fine-tuning and optimizing going forward. So I'm quite happy with my solo framework. It's done its job. It's ticking over. And this new edition, I've got the theme and atmosphere. It's going to add a bit of richness of the exploration dimension and hopefully bring back a bit of a wonder factor of exploring. And I already had a bit of a sample of that in the last adventure, where I really quite enjoyed the fact that maybe we spent a long time doing this, but I found it really quite, looking back on it, I thought, well, this is actually quite interesting, what's happened, and how things have just come together just by making a few rolls on a couple of tables, and I've suddenly got a bit of a theme to a room and a bit of a backstory. And then the Northern Marches, I'd say, is still full of adventure possibilities. It carries on. And then the mini game dimensions, added flavour, had these, to me, they've added, as I said, a bit of flavour. They've had plenty of side effects and spin-offs, and hopefully a lot of entertainment. So again, I like the mini game aspect, and my churn mechanics and threads. The control framework I've got is a very satisfying dimension. I feel I am in charge of this. So overall, I get like tick on the box for AD&D. It's really delivering what I wanted. Classic Traveller, the Shadow Nebula. I would say the setting process creation was intense but rewarding. The service history and character creation was very immersive, and I really enjoyed being right almost in the skulls of the character. The situations and patron searching, You know, that really pushed my role playing and improvisation to the extreme. It really quite exhilarating at times. So again, I really enjoyed that. The mini campaign framework, you know, bringing together the design steps is proving to be very satisfying. So I just feel like it's all coming together, which is a great thing. RuneQuest Second Edition, the Great Veil. I would say the rule mechanics are comprehensive and streamlined. That's the feeling I get from RuneQuest. I just get a very competent system. It's a feeling of realism, but not complexity. You might read it and say, well, this looks a bit complex, but actually when you get under the, you know, an understanding of it, it is not complex and it feels realistic. The differences with the other RPGs is very interesting. I think that's quite stimulating too, how it's different from AD&D and the other Dungeons and Dragons type rules. And when we can start playing more of these other fantasy rules, we'll be able to see the differences too. The Bronze Age setting, the warrior cultures and cults. I want to explore this dimension. I think that's, you know, from a personal historical perspective, I find this very interesting and stimulating, and I want to try and maybe emphasize that a bit more than I have been doing at this stage. The potential of exotic monsters as opponents, well, you can resist brews and all that kind of stuff. They're there in spades. There's less emphasis on mega dungeons and more on intimate and contained adventure locations. So that's exactly what we wanted to do with the RuneQuest game, and I think that exemplifies it. On BX Dungeons and Dragons, the Barony of Westmark, I think there's much more of a free-form play style that I've been able to exhibit. My archetypes and character evolution and interactions, you know, I found that very, very rewarding, having these archetypes and using them to shape their interactions with the world, and how the characters are evolving through these archetypes. The barony setting concept, I think that's quite an interesting experiment that I'm doing. It's almost like a bit of a thought experiment, and just see where that goes to. The interactive playstyle is working well. I like how my little mini games are kind of playing out as we go through, and we're almost like going in a narrative evolution. And it gives a fantastic vibe and feeling when playing. And I really enjoy playing it. It's just as simple as that. I get a great vibe from it, and it really gives off a really quite a polished little rule set that is a joy to play. It's like driving a nice little sports car. I think it's got that kind of feel. Holmes Basic Dungeons and Dragons: The Great Wilderness. This is a nostalgia trip for me, I will admit it, and hopefully the viewers. You know, you could say you're cashing in on nostalgia, Brian. Well, if I am, it's for my own benefit. So, and if you were getting a nostalgia fix out of it, great. I'm delighted for you. Enjoying the challenge to solo and use rulings and mechanics to support the campaign. I think it is a challenge because it hasn't been. I haven't seen examples of it being soloed, and I am using my own mechanics to see just exactly where that goes. Simpler rules are refreshing, light relief. They're a lot of fun. Yep, that's what it says on the tin. And I'm looking forward to how I can inject some variety into the combat and exploration. So, you know, just some simple things, making my combats a bit more exciting instead of maybe a two-dimensional things of just lining them up. And saying, right, you know, you bash the orc over the head. Maybe the orc jumps about a bit, or it gets up on the table, or hides under the table, depending on how brave he is. And on the exploration side, maybe bring in some nice little features to do with dressing or theme or whatever. And nothing like over the top. Maybe not like my AD&D one where I look up like 20 tables for each room. Maybe that just some little hook that I can just bring into everything that just teases out a bit of atmosphere. So then, I know I have taken a long time to do this, and it's an update, but the whole point of this was to say that, in conclusion, you know, if you ask me the question, what don't you like about any of these games, Brian? And I would say, well, nothing I could say off the top of my head, and to me, that says something. So I think this time around, you maybe back in the 80s, I would have said, oh, AD&D, you know, it's got these shortfalls and I've got to improve it and stuff. This time around, it's almost like all that baggage has disappeared, and each of these games I am almost coming to it with fresh eyes, you know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I am enjoying every single one of them. I would not say on any of my lists that I think, oh yeah, I'm not, that has not met expectations. That is a big tick in the box. That is, I'm having a great time with Traveller. RuneQuest is really starting to become quite a rich thing. I would say, I've always said that's my biggest challenge. But I'm relishing the fact that I'm almost being a GM on it. This has been a joy. This is amazing doing that again. And I'm really looking forward to Stormbringer Aftermath. I don't know what you would say. Are you looking forward to it, or are you dreading it, or it's got a whole different vibe. But I'm still gonna experience. I think you need to experience Aftermath and just see what it's all about. Middle Earth, I am really looking forward to that. That's going to be something. Space Opera, likewise. Chivalry and Sorcery, it goes on. And I am not going to keep on harping on about these, but just to say, I do appreciate the fact that you're on this journey with me. Hopefully, when you see the portfolio, it's quite extensive. Hopefully, by the time I get to say the end of 27, and that'll be what, in 2 years, I will have a comprehensive view of that I have role played everything in that portfolio, and I could say my channel stands as a place to go for if you want these first generation games played a level of detail that is satisfying to appreciate, satisfying to watch. And also, I should have the experience by then that I can be a bit more authoritative over the rules, a bit more knowledgeable about what I'm talking about, and I might have some solo, some basic, some paradigms of how to solo these games effectively. And probably encourage you just to do your own thing and be quite DIY like I am. And I think that is a nice way. If you do feel a sense of achievement, if you do it your own way, and the advantage of that is that you're not being maybe constrained by someone else's view of how you should be playing. You're doing exactly the way you want it to. Okay, right. I think I've talked enough. I just want to say thank you very much for coming with me on this channel 8. Channel 8 sounds like a television program. My 8th channel update, and hope to see you soon. Thanks. Bye.